really hard, and the software requires a certain manual dexterity that folks over 60 may lack. Hello, I am Dave Ackman of the Gateway Division of the National Model Railroad Association, and I'd like to welcome you to the second section of my seminar on automating computer-aided design for 3D printing of model railroad structures using a technique I call generators. If you attended the first section of this clinic, either at Gateway 2022 or perhaps in a virtual clinic I taught for your division in the last year, great! But if not, let me bring you up to date. I really like creating structures for model railroads, particularly requires a certain manual dexterity that folks over 60 may lack. I was born in 1948, which makes me a really old guy, and early in 2022 I got frustrated with all the work I had to do to create distinctive models. To make a structure required so many iterations to satisfy me. Dimensions needed changing. I would get a new idea. I would slip and run a cut, and then it was back to the hobby store for more materials. And I was never really pleased with the variety of styrene pieces available commercially. But I am a retired computer scientist and still know how to write programs for Microsoft Windows-based personal computers. What if I could write a program specific to an individual type of structural component? A program which was basically a form describing a primitive, like a four-walled building or a shake-shingled roof. What if the program would generate a 3D model for me that I could print on my 3D printer, currently a Bamboo P1S I bought for about $600? I can do that, and so I did. I made a bunch of them, and I call them generators. Best of all, they are yours for free. At the end of this presentation, I'll show you how to download the programs. But for now, know that there is a link on my webpage, http://dackm.github.io, which downloads a zip file with all the executable programs. Everything runs under Microsoft Windows. The internals of my programs are my secrets, but you are welcomed and encouraged to use my generators to create your own custom structures free of charge. For starters, here is a generator I introduced last year, which creates a basic four-walled building. At the top of the form, there appears a set of radio buttons where I select the style of the walls on the building I wish to create. If any option is grayed out, like the one for brick walls, it indicates that I intend to add that feature sometime in the future. Below that are input parameters which specify the footprint of the building, most notably its width, length, wall height, and roof pitch. The substrate thickness represents the thickness of the walls. And for a clapboard building, we get to specify the height of each board and the angle of the boards from vertical. All of the defaults are pretty good for starters, but if you modify them and want to save your parameters for a later date, just click on the light blue Save Parameters button to save your desired values in a file for subsequent reloading with the maroon Load Parameters button. Here is the end result for our clapboard basic building. We took all the defaults on this one, but you are free to modify the design to meet your needs. No windows or doors just yet, just four walls, but the details will come later. Trust me. Different wall types have different options. For example, log cabins have options for log diameter, how much to overlap or plane each log above the one below so that they don't roll off each other, and how much to overlap them in the corners. Boards and battens have options for board width, how wide each batten is to be as a percentage of the board width, If you make the percentage high enough, it will begin to look like the battens are inside the boards. And how much higher each batten is than the board. Note that dimensions are in millimeters, not life-sized units. This means that the generators are scale independent. You decide how big the final object will be and design it to fit your railroad. And here we have samples of a log cabin and a board and batten structure. It's all the same program for a basic building, just different options. But we did skip a step. Clicking on the green Generate button does not create a 3D model file. It creates an SCAD file, which in turn creates the 3D model. But what's an SCAD file? SCAD is a 3D modeling language supported by a free Windows-based program called OpenSCAD, which can be downloaded from http://www.openscad.org. The language allows us to describe 2D or 3D objects we wish to create, including solids and holes. Here we see the specification for cubes and cylinders, along with their positioning. Our generator allows us to create objects we want by filling out a form, kind of like ordering something from Amazon, and the generators translate our specific wants into tailored geometric specifications. When OpenSCAD is started, we click on File, Open File, to import the SCAD file the generator created. We see a rough depiction of the structure primitive we just created. If we like what we see, we hit the F6 key to render the object, which takes anywhere from a few seconds to about a minute, during which time the rough image will disappear. I say a maximum of a minute, but one really big brick wall with over 2,000 bricks took just click on the STL icon to create a stereolithography model file suitable for slicing and printing. Voila! A 3D model of our design, and we did not need to learn computer-aided design. While the concept is simple, the implementation technology is fairly complex. I needed to know how to program in Microsoft Visual Studio, Visual Basic, and OpenSCAD. Some of the generators are over 1,500 lines of code long, and the OpenSCAD programs they create can be even longer. Geometry and trigonometry are used everywhere, and I had to think in 3D so everyone else could think in 2D. It's not brain surgery, but still pretty complex. Let's run through the entire process again from end to end. We start a generator, change any parameters we desire, and if we desire, we save the configuration in a file of our choice. Then hit the green Generate button to save the design in a format compatible with OpenSCAD. We then launch OpenSCAD and open the specification file we just created. We can pan, zoom, and rotate in OpenSCAD. If we like what we see, we do a design render, or hit the F6 key, which does the same thing. When the render is completed, we click on the STL icon to create the 3D model. At this point, we can slice and print the object, or import it into a CAD program for additional modification, and then export the modified object for slicing and 3D printing. While this clinic is about what's new, I do want to show slides of what was available last year. You've already seen the basic building generator with its 3 siding types. We also have a roofing generator, which can create board and batten, fish scale, and diamond-shaped shingles. There is a separate generator for shake shingles, but by changing the parameters and turning off the randomization of shingle sizes, This same generator can create standard tab shingles. I also made a generator to create brick walls, which, with the creative use of holes, can be the starting point for all sorts of storefronts and other structures. And by altering the input parameters, this same generator can create concrete blocks or other regular rectangles, even mitering the vertical edges. Another generator creates plank flooring for building interiors and exterior decking. Still another creates concrete foundations. I am particularly proud of my window generator. This generator allows you to create multi-window windows, multiple sashes per window, multiple panes per sash, and to raise the sash as desired. You can control the overall window size to your specifications. I'd like to add pediment features in the future. At the Gateway 2022 NMRA conference, I presented a quickie tutorial on how the free Tinkercad software could be used to punch holes in walls of a basic building to make spaces for windows and doors. And this tutorial is now available independently on my website at http://dackm.github.io. Learning how to punch holes and align objects are two of the 9 major things to learn with any CAD package. So spend 6 minutes with this tutorial and learn the basics of computer-aided design. And with that introduction, you are now up to date with where we start part 2 of my Automating CAD clinic. You are going to see generators I created in the last year, enhancements to the generators I introduced last year, and ways to combine generated objects into more complex structures than I anticipated back in 2022. So what's new since 2022? How about shutters and louvers, awnings and arch roofing, billboard supports, trestle bents, and construction tools, rafters and purlins, operational garage doors, circus tents, and staircases and balconies? These generators are probably the reason why you decided to attend this clinic. Let's start with shutters. You already know how to create a basic building and custom windows, and know that you can punch holes for windows. Shutters are nothing more than specifying the desired dimensions and generating a panel. Like windows, you can superimpose your shutters on a basic building, or punch a hole in a wall and snap them in next to your windows. The generator creates only a single shutter, but you can import as many copies as you need into your slicer so you have complete control. You might even want to composite your shutters with your windows for easier manipulation. My generator creates only modern 2-section louvered shutters, but there are indeed other forms: Bahama shutters, Western shutters, plantation shutters, and many more. Perhaps I'll get to a few of these in the future. Louvers are created to provide ventilation into the peaks of the walls of basic buildings. Just select your desired shape and dimensions and the amount of separation between slats, and you are on your way. Once a louver is created and you have rotated it into the desired orientation, you can superimpose it on a building wall in Tinkercad. One way I make it work is to align the louver to the center of the appropriate wall, deselect the building, use the cone tool to raise the louver into the desired location, and finally select the building and move it back just a bit until the elevated features disappear. Alternately, I use Tinkercad to create a hole the same size as the louver but deeper, and then position the hole as a punch into the side of a wall prior to inserting a separately printed louver. This technique has the advantage of allowing you to create the louver in a different color than the wall without tedious painting. My very first clinic ever was on creating billboards from styrene, and I developed fixtures from ultra-high molecular weight polyethylene, or UHMW, to make the assembly easier. I have a complete woodworking shop in my basement, so creating these fixtures was easy for me, but near impossible for most other folks. So I invented a generator for billboard supports. You just need to specify the dimensions of your artwork, how far above the ground the billboard should be, whether you want a space for a toe gap, and what parts you want to create. The face frame, boardwalk, and leg assemblies are all separately designed components. If you choose to elevate the horizontal support, the support for the boardwalk above the other leg components, you will need to use supports when printing, and often this becomes problematic, so be aware. I am currently developing a generator for awnings. Growing up in the 1950s, before air conditioning was common, I remember awnings everywhere on residential windows and commercial storefronts. This is a complex generator, as there are so many awning profiles, and the user interface was tricky. I deviated from prior generator designs and presented images of 4 awning profiles from which the user is allowed to pick the basic design. Of course, there are the basic width, height, and overhang parameters. While awnings are basically triangular, they can be enhanced with extensions on the back or bottom. Gutters were created to resemble seams, and scallops or triangular shapes added as fringes. Your own painting or custom decals will add to the effect. Awnings can be placed back to back to resemble a tent, or placed on a separate leg set for an entranceway to a fancy restaurant. You are on your own to create a red carpet. Hollow awnings may need supports when 3D printing. While only one of the 4 profiles has been created at the time of this writing,